When it comes to the things that we use every day, whether it's our phones or our laptops, we want it to be the fastest with the highest storage capacity, basically in the highest specifications. Most times, the entry-level stuff is only something we resort to, well, because reality is harsh.
To some extent, this is also true with cars. We want the M's, the AMGs, the R's, the RS's. But again, most times, our abilities don't match our desires and we have to resort to the lesser models. Which brings me to this new facelift BMW X3 sDrive20i M Sport. It's one of 3 new facelift BMW X3s now in Malaysia, alongside the sDrive30i and 30e, and it costs 296,000 ringgit. It's about 41,000 ringgit lesser than the new sDrive30e and 43,000 ringgit lesser than the sDrive30i. They're all locally assembled and come with the standard 2-year unlimited mileage warranty, opt for the 5-year warranty and service package, and this is what you're looking to pay. Obviously, if you can afford it, I'd recommend to go for the best, the most expensive variant out there. Max it out. But if you can't and you just need an X3, is the base model sDrive20i good enough in terms of performance and features? For starters, it's rather well dressed. It's got an M Sport body kit, so sportier bumpers in the front and back, M Sport suspension, and 19-inch M light alloy style 887 wheels. For lighting, you get adaptive LED headlights, which is good enough, and the same as the more expensive sDrive30i and 30e. That's not all. Back to the question on whether it's lacking features, considering it's the base model, it even comes with a hands-free powered tailgate. But what I really like is the auto lock and unlock feature paired with the puddle lamps, which is particularly cool at night. As you approach the car, the lights come on, but the car doesn't unlock. It only does so if you take another step closer. Really smooth. It gets even better when you consider that the pre-facelift sDrive20i only came with standard kit and wheels. I'll let you be the judge of how that looks. Before, the base model X3 would just drown in the sea of cars. I know I wouldn't take a second look at it, but now it actually looks quite striking, doesn't it? Whether it's stationary or on the move, I think it just looks a little more striking, especially with those wheels and that large rear diffuser. And I personally like how this new front end looks. With the facelift, you get slimmer headlamps, new daytime running light design, the grille is now joined together with sharper edges. You get some origami going on around here, replacing the rectangular outline from before. And this section here, well, no more fog lamps, unlike before. Not even in the sDrive30i and 30e. The rear also raises some questions. While I would agree that the taillights look more futuristic, but as a whole, does the rear end actually look better than before? I wonder, for the older customers looking at the X3, would they look at this and think, perhaps a little too radical for me? Maybe the GLC would look a little more subtle and elegant? So I showed off this car to different groups of friends, as I always do when I have test cars, and there have been mixed opinions. Some even said that they find themselves paying a little too much attention to just the tail lamps instead of the entire rear end. But what do my friends and I know about car design? When the pre-facelift X3 first came out, I thought the front grille was just a little too big. But now that they've made even bigger ones, I think this one actually looks fine. So maybe when they made the taillights look this big, we'll think that this looks fine. BMW designers, man, perhaps a little ahead of their time, because I noticed opinions on the vertical kidney grille have changed as well. When it first came out, my goodness, the memes, the jokes, the criticisms. But now, sometime later, people are saying that it's looking more attractive. Even those who didn't like it at first, including me. Like the exterior, I think there's enough changes in the interior, especially in all the areas that matter, to keep it fresh and go on for a few more years. Every control panel is new, like for the aircon and the gear lever. That's similar to the ones you see in the latest 218i, the 3 and 4 series. What I like about this section now is that the controls take up most of the space, and that means less glossy surfaces and less fingerprints, and that is good for me. The aircon section here also looks radically different now. Basically what they've done is tied the aircon vents and the controls together and wrapped it with a nice chrome ribbon. And these two panels have practically swapped places. You do get a larger 10.2-inch infotainment display that's about an inch larger than the previous sDrive20i, linked to a standard sound system. The Harman Kardon in the X3 for example, is obviously better, but honestly, this is good enough. What I really like is how clear the reverse camera display is. The display in itself is a little small, but the clarity, especially in the dark. Connectivity-wise, obviously you get Bluetooth, and for Apple users, you get this iPhone feature thingy that connects the phone instantly via cable, but Apple CarPlay, BMW wants some money for that. The one new thing in here that has the biggest impact to this interior is the new instrument cluster design, similar to the one in the new 218i. I really like how it looks, but I wish there was a bigger difference in the display when you're in sports mode. It's digital, but projects a traditional analog meter. Everything from the fonts, the sharpness of it, just works for me. It looks even better at night for some reason. And then squashed in the middle is a 5-inch display, displaying things like the trip meter, fuel consumption figures, even the songs you're playing. What's also different but not so obvious is the steering wheel. You get the same design, the same look, but the layout of the buttons have changed slightly. At the back, not much has changed, and if you ask me, it's not lacking anything. Not at all. You get rear aircon vents with controls for the temperature and wind direction, 2 USB-C ports, and lots of room. I'm about 180 centimeters tall with the driver's seat adjusted to my driving position. I'm sure you can see how much room I have. I've said this before when I reviewed the pre-facelift X3, and I'll say it again. The rear seat legroom in here makes me wonder why you need an X5 if you just need a BMW SUV for family use. Obviously, you get more room in the X5 and more is better. But you also have to deal with driving a much larger vehicle. Which brings me to my next point. If you think the base model sDrive20i won't have enough power, let me tell you, don't worry. From where I'm seated, there's more than enough performance for most people. On paper, it may seem significantly more inferior than the more expensive X3 and 30e, with 70 horsepower and 50 Newton meters of torque less at 184 horsepower and 300 Newton meters. But with this level of performance in the real world, if you're complaining, you really shouldn't be looking at the sDrive20i at all. It essentially uses the same 2-litre turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, just with different tuning. I think what's more important is that this one only comes with the Steptronic automatic gearbox and not the Steptronic Sport. But in most normal driving conditions, in automatic, you almost won't feel it at all. It's not that big a deal. It's still smooth and seamless. Fuel consumption has been pretty good as well. I've been averaging about 10 litres per 100 kilometers in the few days that I've had it, but it's mostly in the urban areas. Probably better if you hit the highways. Speaking of highways, you don't get adaptive cruise control, but you still get a lot of driver aids, like autonomous emergency braking, a blind spot monitor, rear cross traffic alert with brake intervention, lane departure warning, a parking assistant, and even the infamous reversing assistant that helps you reverse out of a tight spot with you only controlling the brakes. No M Sport brakes, no problem. I still think that the car slows down in a manner that's assuring enough. As with the M Sport suspension, it doesn't come with adaptive dampers, so you can't play around with the suspension setting, whether to set it in comfort or in sport. You only get one setting. And how has that affected the ride? Well, For starters, cabin insulation I'd say is pretty good, especially at high speeds. But as for ride comfort, I wouldn't say it's too stiff, neither would I say that it's super comfortable. I'd say that it's firm, just nice. And of course, with run flat tires, the ride is always going to be just a little stiffer. The sDrive20i is only rear-wheel drive, unlike the X-Drive models, which are all-wheel drive. Of course, all-wheel drive offers more assurance, more grip on the road. But in this rear-wheel drive, am I sliding around, especially in the wet? No. Besides, being rear-wheel drive, I believe that you get to experience the X3 in a proper BMW way. Hashtag if you know, you know. I will admit, when I first reviewed the pre-facelift X3 back in 2018, I was not a very big fan of how it looked. It had odd wheels, it didn't come with an M Sport body kit, it had an unusually large grille at the time, and a color palette that even 60-year-old uncles and aunties would find boring. But now look at it. Even as the base model sDrive20i, it now looks like this, and it comes with all the necessary features to get people's attention. This car, with these specifications, I think has leveled the playing field for all the X3 variants. All the additional stuff that you get in the higher variants, like the 20-inch wheels, panoramic roof, better sound system, all-wheel drive even, for example, are nice to have, but even if you get the lower sDrive20i now, you don't feel like you're getting a base model car. And that's all I have to say about it. Thank you for watching.